Hey guys, it's Ted with HDpiano. Here's how to play Heal. 1, 2, 3. Here's the verse. And the second verse is the same as the first verse. So we're just going to focus on this much in this lesson. I will cover the entire song across a few lesson sections at HDpiano.com. And this is a song, it's such a beautiful piano ballad by Tom Odell. And it's kind of deceptively simple to learn because the chords are pretty repetitive. They're really pretty, but there's only a few chords to learn. However, the rhythm is actually quite difficult. This is an odd meter song that moves back and forth between lots of different meters. And all of that is kind of hidden in these beautiful chords. So we'll dig into the rhythm. I'll give you some practice tips for tricky songs like this when it comes to rhythm. But first, I just want to teach you the chord shapes because these are relatively simple. We basically have two phrases to learn in this first intro and verse part of the song. So we're starting on this chord. We have 3 notes in our right hand and just 1 note in our left hand, and we'll be sticking with that for most of these chords here. So this is a B flat minor chord, B flat in the left hand, and then D flat, F, D flat shape in the right hand. Then we move most of the notes just down 1 step in the scale to get this F minor over A flat chord. And I mentioned the scale there. We are in the key of D flat major. So there's our major scale. One of those scales that if you ever read traditional sheet music, it can be a little scary because there's so many flats. But if you're learning piano from HDpiano, you don't have to be too intimidated by a key like D flat. I actually find that a key with a ton of flats like D flat can be easier to play physically than some of the keys that are all white keys, just because it kind of fits the hand well. You know, it works well with the way that our thumbs are a little shorter than the rest of the fingers, and you end up only having thumbs on white keys. So anyway, we're in the key of D flat major here, and all these notes are coming from that D flat major scale. So here, you can remember this change from this first chord to the next one, if you like, by just noticing that this F stays where it is, and then the rest of the notes move down 1 note in the scale. 2 more chords to learn in this first pattern. So we're going to go here. This is D flat major in the right hand, F in the left hand. And then a G flat major chord, nice and simple. G flat on the left hand, D flat, G flat, B flat in the right hand. And this chord really is a G flat 6 chord because there's a lot of points in the song where we're going to be adding in that E flat in some form or other. And that's really the main variation you're going to see in this first chord progression. As the piano part progresses, you know, we tried to catch all the little details of what you hear on the recording. So there's different ways that you'll hear us elaborate on this G flat chord, but they're all based on these 4 notes: G flat, B flat, D flat, E flat. So that first chord progression that's it. We've already learned it. And before we get into the rhythm, I'm actually going to show you the one other chord progression that we need. And this is the first time where he sings Heal. Such a beautiful moment. And the chords are different here. So let's check them out. We start on the same chord, B flat minor. And then we're going to move up in the right hand to this shape, E flat, E flat in the right hand, and then we have C and A flat in the left hand. So this is an A flat major chord with C in the bass. And you might remember this motion that we're just moving up in bass notes, one note at a time to get to here. So jumping an octave, but we're continuing this upward motion of the bass. So B flat, C in the bass, and then D flat in the bass. So this is a really pretty chord that we end up on here. It's a D flat chord in the left hand, D flat and A flat, but then in the right hand, we have this suspended sound with an E flat minor triad, B flat, E flat, G flat. So pretty. And then we resolve to D flat major. And then D flat over F. What a beautiful chord voicing. So this is F in the bass and then D flat in our left hand thumb. And then we get this familiar shape. A lot of our chords in the right hand have had a shape like this where we have an octave and then one note in the middle. So this is A flat, D flat, A flat in the right hand. And then we're just gonna move all the notes except for the D flats up a note in the scale to get to G flat major. And that's the end of the chords in that second chord progression. So in terms of the notes we need to play and the chords that we're playing, we've already learned it, right? In the introduction, we play that first chord progression twice. We do that twice. And then the verse has 2 of the first chord progression and then 1 of the second chord progression. And that's a verse. The second verse is just a repeat of that first verse. So that's it for the chords. Let's get into the rhythm now. So we would call this an odd meter song, meaning that there are some measures that have a different number of beats than the expected number, which is 4. Most music, especially pop music, is going to have 4 beats in every measure, and the beat is that pulse you feel underneath the music. In this case, we have a measure of 3, then a measure of 2, and then 2 measures of 4. and that formula doesn't even continue through the entire song. Like on this other chord progression, that rhythm changes into a bar of 3 and then 4 bars of 4. So there's a lot of complex things happening with the rhythm here. I will count it through for you, basically the 2 things that happen, the first phrase, how that works, and then the second phrase. And what I want you to listen for is how there's this steady subdivision of the beat underneath it that remains. So it's half a beat. This is what's going to be steady. It's the 1 and 2 and 3 and. That pulse, it would be at that speed where I was just counting. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. That's going to remain constant. That's never moving around. And so even though the numbers that we're giving to these different beats and the groupings of strong and weak beats change, there is a steady, constant pulse to the music. And so when I'm playing this through, I'm kind of marking that in my head to help keep me in touch with the time. I'm going etc. And I hope you like those wordless syllables I was using. But keeping track in your head of where that subdivision of the pulse is, because it stays totally constant, that's going to really help you with your rhythm here. All right, so with all that preamble, here's how we would count this through. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, and then it repeats. And so you notice that last addition to the G flat chord came on the end of 4. It's on an upbeat actually, which is, if you just listen to the first part of the recording where there aren't any drums or any other reference, it's really hard to tell what's happening with the rhythm, and you might not know that was an upbeat. So, okay, so that's how we would count it through. I'm going to count through the other chord progression, and then I'm going to give you a practice suggestion for how to get this feeling more comfortable. So here's the second progression. This is a bar of 3 followed by 4 bars of 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Okay, if you're looking for a way to practice this, to make this easier to navigate, first, I do highly suggest practicing with those same counting syllables that I just used. However, another thing that you might try is actually playing all of these subdivisions I'm talking about. So for each of these chords, rather than hold out the chord, I'm going to repeat just the top note of the chord for each of these subdivisions. Check it out. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now if I add in the chord and I do the same thing, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and repeat. You can hear that it's closer to the original. Now I'm going to hold out the chords, but I'm going to think of those subdivisions in my mind. And I want you to do the same. I'm not going to count aloud anymore, but you can play those same repeated chords in your head, especially if you're playing along with me. This is a great thing to try. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and. 4 and 1. Okay, I threw that 4 in there because if you're trying to play along with me, it can be pretty hard to keep exactly the same pulse as somebody else when you're just holding something out for a long time. Anyway, so I thought that might be helpful to you guys as a practice tool for this, to play through, not only think through, but start by playing through every subdivision of the beat to keep track of these weird numbers of beats in these different measures. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention is that what's really going on in my head as I play this is that I'm hearing these groups of 3 beats, and then I have to sort of start in the right spot for the held out chord. So the way that I'm hearing it as I play it is like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that little stutter of the and going into the held out bar of 4 on the G flat, that's really the hardest part of the rhythm. If you're able to do this kind of switching back between groups of 3 subdivisions, yet da da, yet da da, and then switch into this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the rhythm, as I said, is by far the hardest part of this. Play around with it, see what works for you in your head for what you're going to feel and think of as you play through these tricky odd meter measures. Okay, great job on part 1. If you're on HDpiano.com already, you can click on the next video. If you're not, head on over so you can keep going with this song. If there's another song you want to learn, send us your ideas at requests.hdpiano.com. You can follow us on social media for a heads up about new lessons. And if you're on YouTube, drop us a comment because we love hearing from you. I'm Ted with HDpiano.com. Until next time.